show you the plugs. I've been doing just getting there with the tuning on this bike, and as you can see, I'll put this on a bit of black cloth. Hopefully we can see. This is the rear cylinder, and I don't know if we can see in this light, maybe better over the white towel, I don't know. Anyway, this is more of a chocolatey light brown color, which is pretty much where you want it to be. That's on my rear cylinder, and on the front cylinder we can see this is really, that's almost a white, a light gray color. So that's something you can check quite easily. I mean, these are new plugs, so this is actually a hotter plug than it should be. It should be a BP7ES, but anyway, I'm running a BP8ES at the moment, which is a cooler plug, but it'll still show the same problem even on the cooler plugs. The other thing that goes on here is backfiring at the carb, or spitting at the carb, which this one was doing. It's getting better as I've been raising the float level. Now, the main problem I found with this system is the floats are actually sticking. If you don't set these things just right, this is a real problem. And what happens there is the fuel will just come up this, when you're doing this test here, it'll run up this indicator line and overflow, and what's going on there is the fuel is going straight into your engine, and you don't want that, because it's going to end up filling up your crankcase with fuel, which is probably not a real good idea. So I've had that on this bike, particularly on this carb. Okay, that's the carbs off the bike. I know in the manual it tells you to twist off the carbs, but I have my own reasons for doing it the way I do it. Everybody can do it their own way, of course. So this is what we have. Right hand carb is for the forward cylinder, left hand for the rear. You can't get these mixed up. You got an F here on the bracket and an R here on the rear, to the rear cylinder. So this is intake for the rear cylinder. It's a good idea to just take one of these apart at a time. You don't really want to be swapping part. That applies to any sort of machinery, of course. If you're used to working on bikes, cars, bicycles, whatever, you should always keep things matched up. So basically we're gonna just take off the float bowl on this right hand side carburetor. This is just point out a few things while we're here. This is the little drain on the float bowl. We've already been through that, where you hook up your tube for testing the float level. I believe that's 7mm diameter, so 5mm ID hose fits that nicely. This is your pilot. This is often covered when the bikes come from the factory, particularly I believe in the US, where they don't want you messing with this thing here. This is your pilot adjustment for your pilot circuit or your idling circuit. This is off throttle circuit here, so you got obviously one on both carburetors. This the factory setting is usually 2 to 2.5 turns out from bottom. When you're adjusting these things, you've got to be really careful. It's a tiny, in fact I'll take one out quickly. It's a tiny little needle valve, basically, with an O-ring and a spring on it. If you bottom this thing out too tight, you'll best case scenario, you'll snap the thing off in the hole, which is bad enough as it is, but so we don't want to be doing that. So more fuel everywhere. This is what is inside there. We can see how fine this thing is. It's very small, so you don't want these things bent or damaged. Obviously when you're cleaning the carbs, if you're doing an overhaul on these carburetors, everything comes apart, and this would be one of the things you take out. Make sure you put them back together. Spring on the bottom. I don't suppose there's anywhere else a spring could go. And there's an O-ring there, of course. I actually put a little bit of silicone on this O-ring, which I thought would be the good thing to do, but it just moves around too easily, so I don't bother with that anymore. So we'll just stick that back in where it came from. These carbs have been previously stripped and cleaned. I'll just make sure that spring is right. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, these carburetors have been thoroughly cleaned and checked many times, so I'm not going to be doing too much of that today. So just putting this
back inside. Okay. So the screwdriver's right in the middle of the camera. Anyway, let's see if I can do it like that. Might look a little bit better. Okay, so you have to have a little bit of pressure on that to get the thread started. So again, be really careful when you're screwing these things in. You don't want to over tighten it when it bottoms out. Now that's at bottom there, so what I'll do is on this screwdriver, I've got a label on this side, so I'm going to turn it out 2.5 turns. So that's 1, 2, 2.5. Alright, so that's where we're at there. I'm just going to take this float bowl off and there's our gasket. So on this forward cylinder, or the right hand side carb, my float level is pretty well. A lot of if you look at the way most people set up these things, if your molding mark or the float is parallel with this flange here, you can see there's a little bit of a mold mark, or the top of the, or which would really be the bottom of the float. I don't know if you can see this properly. This should be lined up. I mean, that's a base setting along this flange here. Now I know this this bike's running a little bit lean, which kind of on the front cylinder, which surprised me a bit. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to make this we're going to adjust this float to a little bit more fuel in, or to let the fuel into a deeper level, basically. Now here's the problem with these things. When you, if you can see below the float, or the float rests on this little tiny needle and seat. Let me just get a screwdriver and point this out. So this is what's letting your fuel in right here and stopping the fuel. So when the float is at rest, like there, it's making a seal to stop the fuel coming in, and obviously as the float level drops, it'll allow the fuel to flow again. So that's off, on, off, on. Now what I found on this bike, on both sides, we'll just take this out now, have a little look at this. So that's your pivot pin. It holds the floats in place. There's no tapering or anything going on with this little pin thing. That's just a straight parallel pin that's held in by the molded shape of the bowl. So I'll put that down there, out of the way. This is the needle valve, or needle and seat. This is the thing that controls the fuel coming in on these carbs. This is a rubber. This is actually a brand new K&L, I believe, part of the kit. Brand new seat here. So this is nice. This is rubber. It's just a little cone-shaped thing, very small. There we go. Now that's sitting in the seat there. That's also new. That comes as part of the kit. I'm not going to put that back in just yet because we're going to have a look at this. Now this is something I found out. This is the stop for the float, to stop it going too deep into the carb body. So you can stop that, you know, wherever you want to, basically. I haven't seen anything written or anybody talk about this. Now mine was set, let's see now, it was, so that's, bring the carb back into the picture here. I'm just going to put this back in basically without the seat quickly to illustrate what my problem was. Now, I've left the seat out for the time being. It's just to show that these what this little tab does on the back of the float. So pretty simple really. All it does is stop the float from going down too deep. Now mine was actually folded, I don't know if we can actually even see this. This is the part I'm talking about right here, this little tab here. Mine was folded way over here, like at 45 degrees. It's more like 90 now. And what was happening was the float was dropping down too deep into the bowl, and then it would jam up trying to get back up, particularly on this forward cylinder. And the reason being is because there's a tilt. I'll see if I can, I'll put this back as it was. I'll just, okay, I'll just show you what we've done here. I bent this back to how I found this, or how it came off the bike, and this was an irritation for some time, trying to find out why the float, I mean this is a brand new set of floats in this side as well. I think maybe they got changed out for this reason, but somebody's bent this thing, this little tab way down. That's how I found it. So like I say, about 45 degrees, and I'll show you what happens here. We'll put this little needle back in, and so it goes that way up. This just hangs on this. This is your tang. This is where you make your adjustment. This little piece here, and it's another thing you want to look out for is this wants to have a nice smooth curve on it. If people have been bending it here, there, and everywhere trying to get the settings right, particularly on these carbs, it might be like have some flat spots in it. You want a nice smooth curve on that. So reasons will be apparent shortly. So we'll put this this goes back down in the hole, the little needle into the seat, needle valve, and your pivot, your float pivot pin, put that back in. Simple. Now then, let's see if this is going to do what it's been doing. So it's hard to indicate this with the carb on its side, but what is happening is, as we can see, with this, the float being allowed to drop down so far, as the fuel level tries to rise, particularly with the bike, the carb tilted forward, this will actually jam up. Now, I don't know if we can see this. It's hard to get the camera to see right in there, but where this tang is now, you can see there's a very steep angle where the float, now it's jammed. That is actually jammed solid. That will not stop the fuel from flowing. So this is a problem, and confused me for some time, more time than I'd care to talk about here. So that's something to watch out for. Make sure that little tab, now I haven't seen anything in the manual saying where that should be, but I'm putting some a fair bit of force on that float now, and you can see it is not moving at all because the damn thing is jammed. So I'm going to readjust that. So I've taken that out of the carb, and it's really a simple little thing, as is often the case with these problems. Doesn't cost a penny, it just needs to be tweaked. And I'm going to put it back down around 90 degrees. There. And we'll have another look at that.